So today is obviously a very, very special day for Alta Vita, not only for the very special announcement that Carolina and I will make later on, but of course, because we have so many special guests in the room today. Our investors, our early supporters, mentors, you know who you are, who have been wonderfully supportive of our humble beginning 5 years ago. And we have also wonderful hospitality operators who've been so relentlessly supporting us as well. And then finally, our clients, visionary clients who have been betting us in our modern approach to disrupt corporate accommodation. One of these clients is a very, very special friend, special person. He is the global head of mobility at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. He is the most admired global mobility professional in the world, voted by the global mobility ecosystem, view from the top. Thank you, Brian. And he's the only two-time recipient of the most outstanding achievement by Forum Expat Management. Please join me to welcome on stage the one and only Kerwin Guillermo.
Thank you, thank you. This is a lovely, lovely place. So I was asked to go over a few, start maybe covering a few trends that's going on that impacts mobility. A little bit boring topic for me, but we'll do that. I'll breeze through that, and then I'll end up with spending more time maybe issuing a few challenges, encouragement for the community in this venue right now. So in terms of how do we keep pushing the envelope forward, creativity and innovation. So I'll go through all of that. Okay, so it is my honor to address professionals from such a critical part of the mobility process in our goal to keep employees and their families comfortable, safe, and enthusiastic as they transition to new environments. Your industry plays a significant role. So let's first take a look at global developments as I've spoken about them in 21 and how they relate to mobility, because these trends determine how we navigate within our business. And hopefully it gives you some signals in terms of what's to come and how we are reacting based on what's going on in the world. So number one, we must keep a close eye on macro level trends. That means watching for shifts in hiring, layoffs, freezes, inflation and recession movements, economic impacts of global conflicts, and so on. Such macro business trends, workforce strategy, and talent mobility are intricately woven together and have an impact on the way you strategize and scale your business as well as ours. As you well know, global supply chains are building in more resilience, risk management, and proficiency. Our businesses are affected, and I assume some parts of your business are affected as well. This is particularly important to the corporate housing industry because you have developed your own supply chain that's part of a larger global mobility supply chain. We know that supply chains are complicated and have a lot of moving parts. When one part of our supply chain networks at risk, the entire chain is vulnerable to disruptions. Next is about expediting global mobility is still essential, and the workforce planning strategies continue to get more sophisticated. Despite geographic unrest and worldwide inflation, globalization is woven into our interdependent world. We will always need certain skill sets in certain locations, for our companies and countries to remain competitive. And even with expanded remote work options, there is always a need for boots on the ground. Everything about mobility has grown in complexity: recruiting, onboarding, retention, understanding and facilitating employee preferences, career pathing, and so forth. But every time we are thrown a challenge, we find a solution. We'll go through some of those examples and challenges later on for us, and then something that I'll share for the industry that you represent. Nationalism, protectionism, trade, and investments. Pandemics don't pay attention to borders, but human response to them do. As governments scramble to contain the pandemic spread, their policies had an immediate impact on borders and trade. Open trade policies, already under pressure in key markets before the pandemic, quickly gave way to restrictive changes aimed at protecting their citizens and interests. there were calls in many countries for increased national self-sufficiency. Nearshoring of supply chains, and increasing talk of permanent shifts to hedge against similar disruptions in the future. But there is the bottom line: trade and investments will continue to flow. And for as long as there's trade and investment across countries, talent will continue to flow. For as long as governments want to entice corporates to make that investment, they will have to open up their market for us to be able to bring in foreign talent into those countries. Our external environment is troubled and potentially volatile. That increases the challenge for anyone whose business touches a mobile workforce. Consider that US and China relations, which often set the tone for global affairs, are strained and growing more tense. The two powers are divided over many issues. But it is imperative that the US and China work together on many pressing global issues that matter to both countries, things like climate change, pandemics, and nuclear proliferation. Russia's invasion of Ukraine also has profound implications for the world, because the war in Ukraine has created deep hostility between Russia and other regions, especially US and NATO countries. Relations have completely broken down, and it is hard to imagine a neutral, satisfactory end to the conflict. Consequently, the invasion affects security elsewhere, like in Asia Pacific. It has complicated the already strained US-China relations and also relations between China and America's partners like Australia and Japan. So it's clear we can expect more geopolitical contestations worldwide. Some countries will choose a side, others will try their best to avoid being caught up in a major power rivalry. Most of us have enjoyed peace for so long that it is hard for us to imagine a frightening outcome. But we must keep our eyes open, we must be pragmatic, and we must be prepared. Companies like ours are starting to prepare for what's hopefully doesn't happen, but we are making preparations, and that will include ecosystem partners like all of you in this venue. Now, let's make our jobs even more demanding with some economic challenges that will continue to confront us in the next year. First, let's discuss cost of living. Even before the Ukraine conflict, inflation was already becoming a problem because COVID-19 had disrupted supply chains. It had also caused developed countries, especially the US, to implement huge spending packages, stoking inflation, which spread internationally. But the war has worsened the problems in global economy. Our reality is that international economic conditions have fundamentally changed. It is not just the pandemic or the war in Ukraine. Our recent decades were an exceptional period. Globalization was in full swing, international trade grew rapidly, China's economy was growing exponentially, and exporting more and more goods at highly competitive prices all over the world. That brought the cost of many products down and kept prices worldwide very stable. Countries are also reviewing their supply chains to prioritize resilience and self-sufficiency over all of these uncertainties. Amid all these uncertainties, we must also consider what's building within the future of work. During the height of the pandemic, remote work reached record-breaking numbers. Almost two-thirds of work can be done remotely. As offices have reopened, remote work is dropping. But the result is a significant increase in hybrid working. 40% of companies are now offering some form of remote work. That also contributed to the rise of digital nomads, those individuals who travel for different locations and work remotely wherever they are. Later on, I'll share some examples and challenges in terms of what that persona and what those shifts introduce in terms of our business and our ecosystem. We can see that remote work has completely revamped the face of our workforces, both domestic and globally. What workers learned during forced remote work was a renewed appreciation for flexible scheduling, extra time with loved ones, and an experience tailored to their preferences. What the job market is demonstrating now is that these are benefits which job seekers are not willing to give up in a post-pandemic market. In fact, 39% of employees would consider relocation if their organization allowed them to work from home. But they don't just want this location flexibility. They also want additional benefits to combat the downsides, such as relief from burnout caused by blurred boundaries between work and life. And I have examples and challenges for you as well in relation to that in a while. When employers consider all of the elements needed to retain, engage, and attract the workforce, it's quite ambitious. But I'm sure all of you, like me, delight in finding the opportunities and possibilities buried in a challenge. So I will ask and answer the next question in a way that I query myself every day. What can mobility leaders and our ecosystem partners do in this environment? This is our aspiration as mobility leaders to provide the path for our customers, whether they're managers, HR, or the employee, to provide that path for them to fulfill their why of mobility, while advancing the adoption of mobility as a strategy across HR to attract, retain, and develop talent, and maybe to motivate them. We create a symbiotic success story. To illustrate, allow me to share a few specific examples of elements in our mobility program and then extrapolate those challenges to become more challenges or encouragements for all of you. First example, what we've done, we've incorporated clear goals for the employee into every move. When we move somebody, whether two-way or one-way, we ask them, what's your goal? And then if they meet those targets, come home on schedule, we pay them more money. If we move them a one-way transfer, we tell them, we'll pay you more money after 12 months, because we know within the first 12 months, they're the most vulnerable, being poached by other companies. I know that because I did that when I was running talent acquisition for years. I would poach talent from my competitors and focus on vulnerable talents who have been moved to that country. They must be premium talent because they received some investment. So we've done that. We've done that. So what I challenge you with now is, from the same spirit, are there ways where we may apply the same approach to our ESG agenda? We know more of our customers are becoming more inclined towards mission and purpose. What is it that you can make available within your control where we may raise an ESG index score, for example, that could incentivize those properties when presented to corporates and customers to select from? In the same way that when you look for flights, Google Flights, you know carbon emission based on flights. Can I look at the same from an ESG perspective in terms of homes? Homes that have adopted capabilities, solar panels, et cetera, smart instruments here and there. Would that make a difference to incentivize in the same way we incentivize employees for hitting their targets? Are there ways where we could incentivize property owners when they adopt more ESG type agenda? Because I know that will sell to our employees, because that's what research told us. They want to be able to gravitate towards purpose. Second example, internally, we refer to this set of initiatives as making good mobility decisions. We curate intelligence that informs our decisions to offer investment options between mobility or hiring local. So we do that. We provide intelligence and capability to our managers and leaders. Let me share a few use cases that allowed us to pivot towards attract, retain, and develop, so you can see what I mean. First, during the pandemic, we have retained employees who are losing work authorization for many countries, and I'll use US as an example. From the last administration, immigration agenda wasn't really top, or it's top of their agenda, but it's on the reverse, right? And what they've done, what they cannot do based on legislation, they've actually taken action based on defunding USCIS, other administrative bodies, to be able, and they collected a backlog because of that. They slowed down the process for immigration. And then the pandemic happened, and what that did was it compounded the problem, leading to a lot of people losing work authorization. And when you lose work authorization, you cannot just go to my competitor and get a job offer. You exit the country, go back to your home country, done. So what we've done is used, again, making good mobility decision and put together intelligence that says, maybe if you move them to, instead of UK, move them to, on a two-way payroll transfer, move them to UK, move them to Ireland, move them to UAE, Costa Rica. These would be cost negative to cost neutral locations. We move them there, payroll transfer, whatever savings you have, because US payroll is way higher, pays for the move itself. Then it makes business sense. Then we build a business case to be able to retain employees, give them exposure to other parts of the business that otherwise, if not for this bad thing, they wouldn't have that access to developmental options. So that's the principal investment. So in some scenarios, mobility transfer is an appealing investment option as well instead of hiring local. By measuring transfer cost, I measure transfer cost as a percentage of annual base instead of usual dollars. Dollars doesn't mean much unless it's converted as a currency of annual base. Because once I can convey cost as a percentage of annual base, then it becomes easier for me, change management-wise, to ask my manager to think about investment options. Do I hire a local and pay a headhunter between 25 32% of annual base? It takes 2 months maybe to be able to onboard the resource to be productive. 2 months is about 8% per month annual base. Divided by 12 months, 8% per month, 8.5. 17% you lose already just for onboarding. 44 days, usually time to fill a requisition, broad-based average. So you lose another 17%, 34% plus headhunter fee, 28%. You lose 52% already of annual base by sending a job onshore, external. And I tell them the investment required to move somebody international, UK to Australia, is probably about 20%. So it makes good investment sense. And you have a higher probability of success because you're moving somebody who knows your culture, because hypothesis is, and backed up by data, says people you transfer, they tend to stay longer, perform better, and build more engaged teams. Investment options, building business cases for the business so they can buy from mobility. That's the lesson, that's the example. So now let me raise a few ideas I wondered about from recent past, and this is now addressed to this audience. We did some headquarters move from Bay Area to Houston at the time when home prices started to soar. They soared really high and they're dropping right now. At the time when home prices was soaring, we had employees who sold their homes in California and moved to Texas because they were enticed by, you can sell this high and they've earned money. But then when they got into Texas, they realized that, oops, it's expensive as well. I couldn't purchase in Texas. So if I have that situation, I wonder what could have been if corporates were approached by people in this room, and then you put a business case for me to consider that says, maybe, based on the situation, what's going on, here's what we can do instead. Invest in serviced accommodations for a prolonged period of time, because this is not the right time to buy your new home because prices are still high. You're probably better off working with you. And because corporates like us, we invest money to be able to support employees with home sale, home purchase. There's nothing really that stops me from being able to divert the same investment I make on home purchase, home sale, to pay for service accommodation for the next 6 months, 12 months, to be able to tide them through before they purchase their new home at the time when they can afford it. And at the same time, it's win-win for our ecosystem. But nobody approached me. Right? So those are conversations that you could be having by being aware of all of these macro trends, being aware of who your customers are, what they could be going through, and helping them build a business case to be able to buy more from a service accommodation perspective, to be able to tide them through, to be able to make good investment decisions for them. And for us, it makes good investment decision to buy from service accommodation versus doing home purchase right away. Because for me, from a retention perspective, both of those have repayment terms associated with the employee. So I would be putting my investment in either pockets, win-win for all. So far, so good? Okay, an emphasis has to be made on how we may pivot some of our perspectives. We can definitely be more than selling rooms and beds. When we understand the why of temp living, the personas and use cases that our customers undertake when they are confronted with temp living decisions, then we can be more creative and targeted in our approach. It's not just selling rooms and beds at a transaction level, it's understanding the why behind the purchase. Just as I help our customers figure out where mobility programs can be applied to fulfill their why of mobility, I need your leadership and engagement to better facilitate an understanding of the why of temp living, so we may partner to fulfill those better. So far, so good? I offer these thoughts to you because we all must shift our thinking for this new workforce we are seeing, we are serving. So I spoke about those trends, what's happening. The power has shifted, and we need your partnership to be able to sell differently to them. Consider this. Is there a way you can work with clients to adopt alternative instruments to what we traditionally offer as part of recruiting and retention initiatives that intersect with the housing products you offer? Let me go through a few. Let me address this with a few ideas we have explored on a limited basis over the recent period of great resignation, or the big blip in hiring surge that we experienced in the past year and a half maybe. We had to harness our creativity to figure out new ways to attract and retain employees. Alternatively, figure out how we bring more stickiness to make it harder for our employees to leave us. So, specific examples within our program. We are starting to use Green Card in the US as an instrument similar to sign-on bonus. When you receive an offer letter from us and from our competitors, your offer letter would have your job, your pay, etc., etc. I want our offer letters to include a commitment to invest in your Green Card within the first year. I cannot guarantee the results, but you will receive that investment. It's about 20 to 25K. It'll be for you and your family. So if my offer letter has difficulty to compete with our competitors, if my offer of annual basis a few percentage points down, I still expect them to get our offer because of the investment in Green Card that we're willing to put up front. It's the same investment I'm making because the traditional approach is we keep renewing your work permit until we've exhausted all the renewals, and then we give you that investment anyways to Green Card. Why not use that instead of entitlement to incentive so our offers become more valuable? So that's an example. Find inspiration from that, and let's figure out what it would look like from a housing service accommodation perspective. Based on those examples, we have the second part of that example, so I'm doing that already by January. We've experimented this year. By second part of next year, we would be offering work authorization for dependents, again, to increase the value of their offer, to increase retention, and oops, by the way, if you decide to terminate, to resign from us, 2 incomes will be affected, not just one. Stickiness, incentives, same principle, find inspiration to that. So let's use a few examples. We have explored on a limited scale if we can change the currency of how we deploy sign-on bonus and retention. Precisely, we did this limited few. We had a few execs who were supposed to receive a retention bonus, and retention bonus for execs, if you're low level, it doesn't almost happen 40K. It's usually between 80 to 120K. If they stay for a year, you give them that lump sum money. Coming from my talent acquisition years, and myself, if I receive that type of retention bonus promise, what I do is I use that to shop for a bigger retention bonus or bigger sign-on bonus from my competitors. So that's what's going on in the market. People do that all the time. So confronted with that, instead of doing that as cash, where the exec could just shop it around, what we've done is to extend the same investment in terms of lease payments. So we started to do that, it worked, and now my challenge is, what else can we be doing? How else can we be selling serviced accommodations like that and operate it as an instrument to attract, retain talent? Then it becomes more powerful because you're not just selling homes and beds and etc., right? It becomes something more. The opportunity had to be viewed on a broader Are there programs that allows us to pivot the application towards attract and retain more than traditional logistics and order-taking approach to mobility? My encouragement for you is to keep challenging your corporate mobility partners to keep looking at it in a different way, then we can start advancing how we apply mobility. The opportunity has to be viewed on a broader scale as we look at extended stay and long-term accommodation needs. Beyond the application, we could have access to a captive audience. You have access to a captive audience who may need services beyond what we usually offer. What about access to lifestyle needs, integration-related services for the family? Let me expound on that example with something else that we were able to do with Alta Vita in the past, well, in the present. So in a separate but connected perspective, HPS delivered on the premise that mobility can be a force for good. This is highlighted in examples where we have evacuated not just our employees or even contingent workers in Ukraine. We have actually expanded the scope of our mobility population to include even the relatives of our team members worldwide who happen to be in Ukraine. We moved those, and Alto Vita and all of you supported us with those moves. We have actually expanded all of that, and then we enabled military experienced personnel to locate and bring people across the border, offer them financial assistance, accommodation of about 4 months at least, plus, and support that will help them transition to their next, including mental health and EAP assistance. We incorporated the Russia office closures, as well as harnessing top talent who had a preference to work in other locations. That's another solid example of how we have prioritized well-being and welfare and balanced that with our business with several group moves out of Russia. So here's the opportunity for this community to discuss. I know you have roundtables or panel conversations later on long-term, extended accommodation and stuff. Though through all of these, we have partnered with Alta Vita, and we are grateful for their contribution. We learned that this particular use case and personas involved, whether individuals or families or multi-family homes, have needs beyond what our traditional program is ready for. They're not just looking for beds and homes. They're looking for something more when you evacuate them. Specifics. If we could have extended providers as part of our ecosystem, if you have those in your ecosystem and you'd sell to us, I'd be most willing to consider them. Examples. Suppliers that could deliver care packages, meal subscriptions, counseling services, remote learning assistance. We were figuring out solutions for all of those for the families we put in homes that you were providing us. But we don't have those providers right now, and believe me, with that urgency that we were confronted with, we overpaid a lot looking for those providers. If you had those, because we know different personas, they could be having those additional needs. You could be selling that, upselling that to a captive customer base you already have, and it would have, again, companies would have bought that. Again, the geopolitical tensions are a reality of our present, and we are taking steps right now to prepare for these services across Asia as well, China, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, and other potential landing destinations for those talents. Climate change has also led to more calamities and natural disasters that could require similar services on perhaps shorter duration. So the need will always be there. It's just being able to figure out different personas, different use cases, but same ecosystem, same platform to be able to sell, same captive audience. So these are a few thoughts I want to leave you with before I step away. Number one, my overarching message today is that no matter what role we play in the mobility process, in order to understand everyone we serve and work with and for, we must have knowledge about what's happening all over the world. Everything we do connects to a trend or other industries. And to conduct our best strategy to develop the best products and services, we must have one foot in the present and one in the future. It's important to focus on what we can control. This is the true measure of a professional, to remain calm in the face of crisis and find the solutions that keep the global workforce mobile. We should always strive to conduct business in the best, most efficient, and cost-effective manner, to respect individuals and with and for whom we work, to lift up those who need help, and to develop employees in a way that serves them and the company that enhance their skills, experience, knowledge, and careers. There is plenty of room for compassion and kindness in business. We need only be an instrument of those higher aspirations to find a way to help others. This push for excellence extends to how we build relationships within our industry with professionals like you who offer solutions or develop solutions with us. By engaging with experts across our ecosystem, by immersing ourselves in gatherings like this one, we enrich our business acumen, intelligence, and harness the collective power of the group in resolving and advancing the talent mobility practice. Lastly, I hope you will pay this gathering forward as you inspire and mentor others and contribute your unique expertise by participating in roundtables, in the panel conversations later, spotlighting success stories with the awards, offering inspiration and encouragement to others. My journey through mobility is built upon gatherings like this, reaching out to people, strangers, and asking them to mentor me, solicit them for partnerships. Our community distinguishes itself by the level of generosity, innovation, creativity, and inclusion we share. You chose to be a part of this event precisely because you are that kind of a community member. I'm proud to address you today and prouder still to learn from each of you as well. Thank you.